Hello and welcome to this, another edition of the Crypto Club and Digital Assets Weekly Catch-Up on Zoom. It is Sunday the 11th of January 2026. We never quite know what we're going to end up talking about, so let's hop straight in and see who's going to join us today. Stuart, good afternoon
morning.
to you.
Well, good afternoon, Gary.
I did notice something really interesting, which is that BlackRock have produced a paper on the forecast of what's going on with a whole range of things, mainly around technology, but financial services and that. And they actually called out the growth in the use of stablecoins, which
Right.
I found curious. And in fact, they did a report on it, amongst many other things. And it seems to be suggesting, stablecoins growing rapidly, and it points to the fact as well that the percentage of total market cap of crypto, 9% currently, stablecoins. So it's curious because I hadn't managed to find that out previously. And that generally USDT and USDC in particular are certainly growing in terms of their market cap. So I found it interesting for an organization like BlackRock to actually call that out.
I'm just wondering what value they get out, someone like BlackRock, what value they get out of stable coins, because they don't control the stable coins, so they're not getting the float interest.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I'm still trying to get my head around, where the revenue is and the profitability is of stable coins for in general.
Well, stable coins, if you're the bank, you're the USDC or DT.
Yeah,
you've got a bunch of money sat there that you're going to put in the overnight markets. So you've got perhaps a couple of billion that earns interest. So that's your income.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I get it from that side, because it's a little bit like how Starbucks is effectively one of the world's biggest banks,
right?
Because it's got some, like, I think it's $10 billion
in the account
of customer money in its accounts. Yeah, and the really clever thing about that business model is that that's $10 billion that's locked in to only be spent in Starbucks stores.
Right, and it's off the books essentially as a contingent liability.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of almost going back to revisiting what happened a few years ago with Facebook and Libra, which you probably remember. When you think about it, if Starbucks was to suddenly start offering a means of being able to transfer your loyalty points or the money you've got on reserve to other account holders, you've introduced a payment scheme that is completely outside of the financial system.
Correct.
Without any regulation, legislation, or constraint or anything, which is why you saw it with Facebook Libra, and they then renamed it to something else, I think.
But that stopped, though, wasn't it?
It was. It kind of went away, and eventually, I think Meta sold it to another company for a relatively small amount. I can't remember the details now. So yeah, it kind of went away. But it was one of those things I remember at the time when it was first announced.
Yeah.
Where Facebook was saying, "Oh yeah, we're thinking of launching our own crypto token, whatever," and people went, "Yeah, whatever." And then the central banks suddenly woke up and went, "Oh, hang on, that kind of like undermines some fundamental stability." And then I think a week or two later, the retail banks woke up. I went, "Hang on, Facebook's about to eat us for lunch," type thing. And then the regulators got in, the governments got in. And I think there was some interesting letters from the US government, if I remember correctly, saying, please stop what you're doing for now. Interesting. So maybe we'll see the same again. And this thing with stablecoins, that I'm still unclear as to where that's going to go and who's going to adopt them. I can see the value of them being used for like interbank settlements and that kind of thing.
I think it's, but if you use them right now, they're outside the banking system. So, for example, if I wanted to send that, £500,000 to you for the arms shipment that you sent me or something, I could do that with USDT very simply, and it'd just be a transaction that goes into your bank. Boom.
Yep.
And you're carrying it on your wallet, and you could spend some of it in Tesco's, or you could go to Marks and Sparks and spend some there,
Yep.
and you could live off of that, and you'd be outside of the system, and no one would really know.
And just for the avoidance of doubt for anyone who's watching the recording,
oh, that's right, you're recording.
Stuart, where he said arms shipments, he actually meant prosthetic limbs. It's like a medical aid type thing.
I was using it purely as a fantasy.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. It does create a different payment rail, which is outside of regulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always worries governments. Always worries regulators.
Yeah, the only time it will get into the system is if you start dropping it into your bank account, which is regulated.
Yeah, which is where I've always said that's where it's the on-ramps and the off-ramps between fiat and crypto that provide the ability to control things and manage things and monitor things.
So what you would do is, if we were doing larger amounts of money, is that you'd take your wallet and you'd fly down to Dubai. You buy yourself an apartment there with USDT, and you'd let it sit there for a year or so, and then you'd sell it. And if it sold at a loss, so what? That's the cost of doing business. If not, you've effectively washed your money.
Yep.
And this is not legal advice.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've just put on one of my taglines, I do not offer financial, legal, or criminal advice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But essentially, that's how a lot of money is washed anyway.
But this is the thing. But again, I hear that a lot, where people are using crypto as part of that enabling facility. But you can do that without using crypto. There are other ways of doing that kind of thing.
Well, absolutely. It is just something that we're familiar with. I mean, another way of doing it, if you want to get cash flow, is you buy yourself a mega yacht, again with USDT, which they'll accept in various countries, and then you put your mega yacht out with a broker, and have it rented out, and for $40,000 a night and things like that, for a minimum of 7 nights. So you're getting constant income from it, which is another way of doing it.
Yeah. Or your really clever one, if you want to do it, is that you set up an operation like that, and then you securitize the future revenue flows from that rental stuff.
Yes.
And that makes it even cleaner money. So,
yeah.
Nathan, good morning or good afternoon to you. And there is a crypto connection as well. In fact, there's several. In that, certainly, I know a number of elite athletes are looking at using crypto as part of their overall investment strategy, because
they're also some are being paid. I think there's one guy that took a long time ago, took his salary in crypto, and he ends up with a huge amount more.
Yeah, well, certainly for a number of elite athletes as well. You look at the amount of money that they generate during a relatively short career span, and they have to work out what they're going to do with that to generate a long-term form of investment and security in that. And quite a few of them are quite into crypto, and some of them are quite savvy with it. And also, I'm aware of a number of projects that have been happening around tokenizing an elite sports player. So effectively, you have shares in a sports player, but it's tokenized.
Why not?
And you then get a share of their future revenue, which is quite interesting.
Well, that's actually very similar to what we're doing with one of our projects. Our website's going to be launchable in a week or two, thank Christ, and then I can actually talk about it in a more visceral way. So the project's called Oak, one of a kind, but it's actually about a 350-year-old oak tree. And the plan is we're selling tokens in the tree, which has already been cut, and we are transforming the part of the tree that we've been able to save from a fate worse than death, which is burning, and turning that into many, many works of art, sculptures, tables, you name it. And the people who buy the tokens in the tree will share the revenue in the tree's future. So it's the same idea. I'm very much in favor of that. Yeah.
That's good. And I'm seeing a number of initiatives like that. And also there's still the stuff about clubs using tokenization for membership schemes.
We're going to do that too.
Yeah.
Very definitely. My son's invested in that. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because we're kind of like going around in a circle. That I've seen a number of these initiatives previously about either tokenizing individuals or tokenizing membership schemes and having like preferential deals for people who's a member of a football association, that kind of thing. So,
well, I think the problem for you guys who've been there from the beginning is that you're probably quite correctly a little bit skeptical because so many things have failed in the past. I think that the difference now is that there's just a broader acceptance of blockchain and crypto as being here to stay, and that unlocks, of course, it's a bit like AI itself. You know, if you'd talked about the sort of investment that's going on in AI 10 years ago, people would have laughed at you and said, no way, you know, it'll never be anything like that. Well, of course it is now. Now we have no idea where it's going to land. But I think with certainly, you know my views on blockchain versus crypto. I'm still agnostic about crypto, but I have no doubts at all that blockchain is here to stay. No doubt. Therefore, tokenization is here to stay. Yeah.
An interesting one to throw in there. I thought this was a really interesting piece of news.
Hi, Lorraine.
Was in the UK this week. Was Lloyds Bank in the UK completing their first blockchain transaction using tokenized deposits. And it's great. They did it working with Archax, who are a UK company who I know some of the founders from Archax from a while ago because we were all on the same UK FCA sandbox.
So what's the purpose here?
So it was just that they did a basic transaction. I don't know if it actually goes into explaining what they did. I don't think it does, as is often the case with these press releases. They're very good at not saying much. Yeah. But it says a tokenized deposit. So presumably that simply means that there's an entry on a blockchain that is like a register entry.
And what is the Canton network? Blockchain.
I don't even know on that.
Yeah. So they wanted to show that they're modern, but we're yet to find out what the purpose is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it looks to me like it's a one-off type experiment. Right. It proved that they basically moved something onto a chain and moved it back again. But it's just the very fact that it's finally an announcement from Lloyds Bank. For those who aren't familiar with Lloyds Bank, quite a traditional British bank. Not generally like a challenger bank style thing. So fairly.
They're a follower, not a leader.
Yeah, exactly. So to see them making that announcement, I thought was quite interesting, even if it is just as an experiment. So
hello everyone. I think if we have a look at that again, it's got the RWA, real world assets. So that might be a clue in what it's doing.
I don't know. And that, hello, Lorraine, by the way. Good to see you back.
Have a look. There's somewhere it says there, real world assets.
Yeah, I don't know. I think all it was that they just put a tokenized gilt. Oh, there we go. A tokenized gilt. So effectively, it's just a register entry. It's like having a receipt. And it's a receipt to say that you've bought something. And they've put that on a blockchain. And then they've moved it back off and they've converted it back into fiat again.
Yeah. Okay, so not very meaningful yet. But I mean, I guess one thing you guys probably know probably more about than I do, but there's I don't want to call it a conspiracy or anything, but there appears to be increasing financial regulation, or at least financial pressure on banks and financial institutions to do a bit more KYC. That includes people that have already been with for a long time. I've had every institution that I'm dealing with has been asking for information about money flows that I'm not used to quite recently, and I'm wondering
There's
whether this is part of.
Isn't
strange.
that better though? Because the ultimate reality is that we can't traditionally spend any money without KYC. So why should that have been the exception anyway?
So explain cash in that context.
Yes, exactly. I thought cash is pretty easy to spend. And I'm old enough to remember when you could, if you had cash in any form, you could use it, and didn't
Yeah,
have to, there were no
so
limits.
the thing is, though, I'm not sure it is because there's a lot of stuff about the government and the banks, and they were tightening this up anyway when they started talking about how much interest you were allowed to have in your bank account. So
That's the
perhaps,
UK. Yeah.
yes, yes. So,
But I'm
so in
not,
the UK, they were already saying, okay, if you earn so much interest on your personal account, so they were already trying to find other backdoor ways of these sort of monitoring what you were doing without
Mm.
calling it that.
yes,
So,
I'm sorry, Lorraine. My own affairs are not UK based. I'm a nomad, and I've got bank accounts all over the place. But I've just noticed a general increase in
mm,
scrutiny. Put it that way. Like I use a company called Wise, which is a financial institution, not technically a bank, but it's very, very effective for me because you can have many accounts which actually end up giving you an IBAN number. You can move money very easily from one to another. When you use your card, your virtual card or your real card, it automatically takes the money out of your wallet if you've got the right money. They have started asking questions that they never asked before, which they say are because they're being regulated. They're
mm.
asking me things like, where do you get your money from? What's your source of wealth? They call it,
Yeah.
and then if I've had that from the French for a long time, where I've had bank accounts. I've closed them, by the way, because they're getting just ridiculous. Australia, I still have accounts in because I'm Australian, and the US, where I spend a lot of time, and the Australian bank's okay because I know them extremely well, so they kind of know who I am already. But there seems to be something going on.
Mm.
Maybe it's to do with more money laundering, or larger sums of money moving around that are untraceable, and so they're getting nervous. I don't know.
So this is the thing, right? So I'm a bit of a skeptic. I'm sure none of us are. So the thing is, though. So I remember years back, so I'm also of a certain age, where I remember years back where there was all this talk of, where did people like Roman Abramovich get the money from? So it's like nod, nod, wink, wink. So the fact was, it's not about necessarily about money laundering. It's there's a political movement and an agenda behind this. So before, when it suited, this wasn't necessarily we need to look into the weeds of it. It's now there is a change rather than, okay, we want to crack down on money laundering. I think there is something else going on which is
I,
bigger than
I,
the
I think
literal.
I think that ties exactly with what Nathan's saying, that he's seeing this actually happening, and we've seen it in the UK for a number of years. Because Lorraine was saying before about, well, does it really matter about certain things? But I've noticed over the years the restrictions being imposed on UK bank account holders have been gradually increasing and increasing.
Mm.
So it used to be that what you could do with your bank account was relatively unrestricted. So you could like buy a property, sell a property, which would involve substantial flows of money coming in and out without any issue. These days, if you're trying to transfer very small amounts, you get all sorts of questions being asked. And also we've seen it in Europe, and it does affect the UK as well. There's introduction of, I think it's part of PSD2, so the Payment Services Directive, where there's an increased effort to prevent illegal activities in terms of trying to do fraud detection, prevention, and everything. They'll say, which now means that for me to transfer an almost insignificant sum, we're talking like £20 or something like that, $25. I have to go through so many hoops now of not just going through multi-factor authentication, but having to log into a banking app to approve it and all this kind of thing. And it's all said to be done to improve the protection of the consumer. But it's a bit like passwords. Once you make passwords beyond a certain level of complexity, you'll start doing things like repeat how you use them or make them variations of a standard thing. So it's one of those counterintuitive things that sometimes by making security better, in inverted commas, you make it worse. And I'm seeing some of that with payments and that at the moment. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Nathan, because I've seen that for a few years, certainly in the UK.
Gary, I don't think that's particularly ominous because with the UK account, which I have several, you pay a vendor. And if it's a large amount, you're then handed back to the bank to verify that that is a good transaction. I don't have any problems with that. And, it seems a lot more secure than the US banking where they just take it out your account. That's it.
I totally support it if it's large sums of money. But there's a kind of like a de minimis level that you would hope. And I know that the way criminals work is that they find out what that level is and they just do loads of transactions below it.
It's based on patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not based on that because I don't use my account every day, that's for sure. And sometimes if I'm doing a small payment, it just goes through and that's it. If I'm doing a large payment for service charge or paying, council tax doesn't even evoke it. But it is just an unregular amount that's going through, then you see the two-factor or
okay, so that all that is probably right, but I have a lot of young conspiracy theorist friends. Right? I work with young people, and their view is that this is all part of this increasing government control over everything we do, and that it's all leading towards the centralized, digital currency that the banks are wanting to, whatever the acronym is for that, and that are trying to be an alternative to crypto, and so and they say, well, this is all just part of knowing everything about you, so that they can control you more. Now, I don't actually believe that, but it's a bit scary for some. Certainly, if you're young and you're used to this level of scrutiny that's happening all over the place, and the amount of information that you have to give out if you want to enjoy the things that your mobile phone can do. It's very hard to opt out. You can do it, but it's not easy.
But what was interesting, I gave a talk when I was in London to a group of people, and they were young crypto heads, and they didn't seem to have any problem with sharing their information or sharing what I would consider personal information. They said it's out there.
So Stuart, picking up on your points, I think it is interesting that you're right that younger generations do seem to be quite promiscuous with their personal data is probably one way of describing it, because they can't see what's wrong with that. And
they're used to it.
Yeah. And it's the norm. It's interesting. I was on a TV program a while ago where we were talking about new forms of payment schemes, such as biometric payments. And I was talking about using facial recognition, where you go into a store, and there was a pilot going on in the UK for this, where you simply looked at a camera, it did a facial scan, it identified who you were, and automatically took the money out of your bank account. And for some people, that sounds brilliant. It's kind of like, from a technology point of view, that's a nirvana. It's brilliant. And then other people say, no, you shouldn't link my identity with my ability to pay for things. It's like a fundamental thing. But what I found really interesting on this program was I was saying how it is that we're already using biometric payment schemes in schools. And like the other people who are on the program with me were saying, we're doing what? I said, yeah, if you go to most schools now, when they go to the lunchtime, whatever it is, they used to use a card for identity that they'd swipe or whatever, but more and more of them are using fingerprints. And they were like, no, this isn't true. Whatever. So I checked with some of the schools in my area, and they're all using fingerprint payment schemes. So what that means, as I was explaining to the colleagues on the program, is it means that those children at that age think that's entirely normal, so don't think twice about it. So biometrics, yeah, you want my fingerprint, fine, that's all sorted. Doesn't seem anything to them.
I don't have a problem with that, actually. I mean, there's a lot of overreaction of what is the government getting. Eventually, the government has got the ability to link all of its computers, although, as we know, the UK and the US have not been successful in doing that for many, many years.
Yep.
And we won't get into that. But one of the things that surprised me is I left my US passport in London when I came back on a trip. And I got to the immigration and said, I know where it is, but I haven't got it with me. And they said, oh, no problem. So they scanned me and asked me a few questions. And right in front of them on the screen, which they weren't meant to show me, I got every single trip I'd ever taken, both in the US and outside. Okay. So, I mean, was it facial recognition or was it the name? I don't know. But they've got the whole history going back about 7 years.
Yep.
So there's information out there, and there's databases that you can go to get that type of information.
Yep. Yeah.
I think
is it scary?
One of the things I would say is that, yes, there is some of this. We know this about you, but we're not sharing that we know this about you. So we should just be aware of that. With regards to the financial stuff, there'd always been this sort of like 10,000 type limit, which people used to try to move money around under the radar, and then you could get flagged if there was some sort of percentage differential for trying to avoid that. So there's been always these types of schemes, and they've been the monitoring anyway under the guise of this thing called UN sanctions. So even when you think, okay, they weren't looking at it, they were saying, okay, are you on some prescribed list? So what I'm saying is sometimes the argument had been it was to see if you're on this very small subset of people which eroded the privileges of many, right? So let us be aware of that. And with regards to payments, this is a difficult one, because if you have like an iPhone, right, or an Android, sometimes it says, do you want to use your phone to unlock and do facial recognition? So it's really saying where is it stopping, right? Is it stopping on your phone, or is it stopping with the retailer? And with the retailer, are they really using their system, or is it some other system that's integrated? So I think, okay, we're not doing facial recognition. Just think how you are unlocking the card payment on your phone when you pay with that. So I'm not sure if that's totally true as it's framed right now. It's just I think it's a we could reframe it and argue we are doing that.
Yeah, I think there's potential for all of that. It's interesting as well, different people's perceptions. So it's curious you mentioned the UN sanctions list. In actual fact, I think the main sanctions list that applies is the US Treasury, or is it the Office for Foreign Asset Control, OFAC. So it's the OFAC sanctions list that the US government runs is actually the main one that people comply with, rather than anything from the United Nations. But the point's absolutely there. We've had sanctions lists for many, many years. It's just the US seems to be getting a little bit more active with enforcing certain sanctions right now, as we'll have seen in the news in the last week or so, where they've decided to start actually having an impact on the Russian grey oil tanker fleets out of Venezuela or Iran and this kind of thing. So
China is the biggest one that's affected by.
Yeah. So politically, that's really interesting, and it's curious as well as to what impact that could have on crypto, because whenever you get instability in the world, there's often the opportunity that people get really worried, think there's going to be a global collapse or failure or war or whatever, and start looking at alternative places to put the money. And crypto is sometimes thought of one of those routes.
Gary, that's very interesting because, you know, in crypto, we had the stable coin, which was really mainly like USDC type thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got this push of this euro ones, and we're thinking, well, is that also part of this threat? Because, you know, obviously there's an argument in Venezuela of trying to unpeg from the US dollar.
Yep.
So is part of the threat with crypto looking at stable coins for these other currency, which is also still part of this sort of this risk that the US might be feeling globally? I don't know.
I think the general thinking, and everyone's got different opinions on this, is that stable coins were potentially a way for the US government to maintain control of things. Because if you take a look at the two major crypto stablecoins currently, which is Tether or USDT, and Circle, which is USDC, that gives the US government a nice and easy way to keep an eye on those two particular tokens. And there's a requirement as well with both of those that they keep reserves of an equivalent US dollar amount in either a bank account or a reserve or whatever. So it's curiously might actually be a way for the government to maintain control, opposed to.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying in crypto now, because of having to do some sort of exchange, there's this movement towards this other, like the European, there's new stable coins coming in, which are non-US denominated. So for me, that is similar to not using with all the transactions in oil being US based. So I'm just saying that the real world is moving towards how we're working in crypto as well.
Mm-hmm.
That perhaps could mean sort of more regulation or oversight, not really because they necessarily care, but because they're trying to minimize this risk of moving away from the dollar.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I see less of an issue around the European stablecoin idea, because that's actually, as much as I hate to admit it, with being in Europe geographically, that's actually a relatively small market. It's when you start looking at the BRICS countries, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, and all of the other organizations who've joined in the last 12 months. So I think Saudi Arabia and some other big players as well. When they start using an alternative payment mechanism, that's where the real threat to the USD dominance in terms of being the world's reserve currency and the way the world does business. I think that's where the real threat may come.
But
we shall see.
That's not live yet, though, is it? That's still like a...
Well, BRICS has been going for years.
Yes, but I mean the stable coin type for it.
Correct. And I don't know where they're at as to whether they've announced anything on that, or if it's even going to happen. So, yep. we live, as the Chinese would say, in interesting times.
Absolutely.
So Lorraine, welcome back from last week, and I presume you've still not sorted your hair out because you're not going on camera.
No. So the thing is, I do like to control my image.
Mhm.
It's so funny, but I blame it also on people who do their recording, because sometimes I go on these calls and say, "Oh no, don't worry," and the next thing I know is they've screenshotted with me on there and posted on LinkedIn and then tagged me. I said, "Oh, look who was on our call." I
Mhm.
thought, "Oh, I haven't got my glad rags on." Sorry. But they do it. It's like, "Oh no, she won't mind." And I'm thinking, "Oh, but I thought this was just us." But they put it and they've tagged me to make it even worse.
Fair enough. Well, do bear in mind this will be going up on YouTube, but we'll only hear your voice. We won't be able to
Yeah,
see you. so,
exactly.
so, yeah, but so, something always to be aware of. Lorraine, where's your area of interest then? Is it more around the AI side of things, or crypto, or what?
So right now I'm doing in stealth mode, as it were, building a product, but it's like a ChatGPT-esque type product.
Mhm.
But I've been looking really seriously at this monetization and maybe like fractional payments. So that's where sort of the crypto comes in. But the
Yeah.
thing is, when I do launch my product, even if it does have crypto, it might not be apparent to the lay user that that's what it's doing.
Okay, that's really good, because I've always argued that if you want technology and that to be adopted, the end user shouldn't need to know what it is that they're using. It should just be easy. Yeah. And ease of use and accessibility and low cost are usually very good drivers to support adoption. And it always blows me away when you get some technology people who think it's really important to talk that this product's Web3 and it's using, choose your whatever buzzword of the week, whether it's agentic AI, Gen AI, MCP, crypto, ISO 20022, smart contract compliance, whatever you want.
Layer 1 versus layer 2, yes.
Layer 1 versus layer 2, you're right. Yeah, and Lightning Network and all this kind of thing. It's like, you know what? An end consumer doesn't care and shouldn't need to care.
I think
So,
some of this might be funding related, because a lot of well, not a lot, but some of these crypto projects, they're trying to drive adoption. So when they are funding and backing you, they're explicitly wanting you to mention the use of their technology. So, and whilst it's better for them for awareness, not necessarily better for you for your product.
mhm.
Lorraine, who is them?
So, I'm just talking in general. So, for example, I was looking at like the story protocol, and it's when some of these, so for example, I think you've got like Coinbase, they've got base, they've got some funding available. You apply and you have a project. They say one of the things you might be told is that, okay, how did you use this? Make this very obvious that you've used our technology. But when you are making it obvious using your technology, there's two parts, right? There's the part for the funders, and there's the parts for someone who might adopt your services. And if you make it too technology about, this is the technology I've used, so some layperson like my dad or someone else will see this and think, I'm not going to use that. I don't know what these words mean. What's Web3? What's all this stuff? And I just want to say, well, how do I pay? I don't really care about anything else. But the underlying, because I do these hackathons, you see,
Mhm.
and the underlying thing is that make it very, very clear you have used our technology. So it's very hard to launch off those types of frameworks. I mean,
I do feel like with all of those, that they're very basically promoting to themselves and promoting to their own community.
Yeah.
Because to me, if I went down the high street now and said, hi, Or would you prefer to pay for something using the Solana network or the Cardano network, or even, as Stuart was intimating, a layer 2 solution Lightning network? People would just look at me and go, "What on earth are you talking about? I just want to buy a cup of coffee." This is the thing, that the technologists, they get so hung up over this. And this is the thing where I still have the conversations with people who promote their organization as like, oh, we're a Web3 native organization, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what are you talking about? What problem are you solving? How are you making life easier for people? Whatever. Oh, yeah, well, we're using a smart contract-based solution with oracles. It's like, is this going to make it easier for me to buy stuff?
Interesting, Gary. You should say that. I'm an investor, and I get pitches, and sometimes I have to stop them and saying, "So what? What problem are you solving?"
Mm-hmm.
And the best pitches I've seen is where they actually tell me a story.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone loves a good story. Along the way, I get to see the princess, I get to meet the villain, I get to, see how it conquered the world, how big the world is, and so on. But if it's wrapped up into a good story, I don't need their go-to-market strategy because it becomes obvious.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't understand is that if I'm an investor, I've got to almost marry you. Because I'm going to be with you for the next 3 to 5 years. And so if I don't have that chemistry with you and you can't talk the same language as me, and by that I mean financial language and technology language, then you're out of here. There's a big fat NO.
So it sounds, Lorraine, what we're both saying is that totally get it in terms of if you're doing a hackathon or something, that the nature of a hackathon is it's sponsored by someone, and they're sponsoring it for a couple of reasons. One is to improve the visibility of their product or platform, and the other one is quite often because they're using it as recruitment opportunity as well. But for the end user really doesn't care. The ones who do care about whether you're using Larvae or Avalon or Ajax or any other letter A thing, the ones who do care are the crypto bros who are really into this stuff, and they might well have a technical reason. I know some people who are buried deep into Ethereum, and they're great Ethereum developers, and they write Solidity code and all this kind of thing. I've got the highest respect for them technology-wise, but when they start talking about, why Ethereum's better for this, and it's like, does it make any difference to the end user? So it's great to hear, Lorraine, that you were saying that the users may not even realize they're using crypto. The only thing I'd offer on micropayments, and again, this is another grey-haired experience type thing, is that there are capabilities within the likes of X, so Twitter, where that's had inbuilt micropayments capability for years that no one's ever noticed. Although I think Elon Musk might have, which I still think that might be one of the reasons why he bought Twitter a few years ago. But yeah, micropayments and fractional payments and all that kind of thing. Again, I've seen this a couple of times, and I do hope one day that the things that I've seen go through the hoop, that something just changes a little bit, and it might be just the technology changes or the culture changes or people or whatever, and it just means we start seeing some successes.
Yeah. So I want to just go, if we can go back one step, right? So if we just look in terms of how sort of Web3 is currently working, right? So, and you mentioned, for example, Solana, and if you look at the breakdown of who's holding actually Solana, it's interesting, right? So a lot of, when we talk about these hackathon projects, it's really like in search of utility, right? So what where in Bitcoin, a lot of some people were moving to Bitcoin because of lack of trust in like financial systems. With things like Solana, why were they moving there in the first place?
Because techies like to invent their own wheel.
Yeah, I was just going to say something similar. I mean, today we're using Zoom, but did you know we're using H.264 scalable video codecs for video encoding, and we're using Opus and Silk codecs for audio, which is bit adaptive for optimal quality. We don't give a flying F about it. And this is what's wrong with the tech is in Bitcoin and all of the other technologies around there, you know, the crypto, is that they get enthralled by their use of words that sound very important when in fact all they are is a utility to facilitate humans to do business better or to live better.
Your other thing as well, Ray, in fairness, different blockchain protocols have come about because the creators believe they're doing something a little bit different or something unique. So, you know,
But the market wants.
Yeah. But when you look at it as well, how many different fiat currencies are there at the moment? There's like, I think it's 146 or something.
It's around that.
Yeah, it's like, well, actually, why do you need 146 currencies? And it's because it's connected to that country's financial system and that kind of thing. But as was proved by the euro in Europe, you know, the countries don't need different currencies now. So it's kind of like the reverse of different having multiple blockchains. And my thinking as well is that you will get different blockchains that do things slightly differently. So maybe some of them are more secure. So you take a look at some of the privacy blockchains, which offer a degree of increased privacy. I'm not going to go for absolute privacy. You may get some blockchains that are optimized for performance. So particularly the ones that are not quite a blockchain, but use DAG technology. So they're very, very fast. There are different reasons for these different things. So we've been joined by John as well. John Lim. Hi, John. You're probably listening to this wondering what you've come and joined.
Yeah, sorry guys, I was a little bit late. But I actually had a more practical question in terms of, because I'm trying to figure out when it comes to the USDT Tether stable coins. I understand it's now claimed to be the main adoption of transactions for business applications for payments. Is there a institution or a bank that is able to accept the USDT coins like a deposit?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, they will be able to convert it into US dollars. I understand there is, but not many commercial banks do that, but there are some digital banks that actually do that.
Yeah.
Which country do you want to do that in?
Yeah, which country? That's my question. Are they based, these digital banks, are they based in the US or are they based in the UK?
There's physical banks that do it in Switzerland. You can do it in the UAE, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, your more fundamental thing is, why do you want to go via a bank to do your stable coin transaction?
Right.
The whole benefit of cryptocurrency is you can do it peer to peer. So if you've got $100,000 of USDT, you can transfer that to somebody directly without going via a bank. It's when you want to off ramp it from USDT to US dollars that you generally have the challenge with. And you're right, not all banks will do that. But
What about
if
JP Morgan?
Well, there's a whole bunch of them who've been doing things like this. So JP Morgan actually had JPX as their own cryptocurrency that they were using for, I think it was internal settlements going along. And then there was talk about companies beginning to adopt Ripple, or rather XRP, as a means of doing it. But it does come down to, as Stuart says, which country you're in, as to how receptive they are to that kind of thing. So, John, I can't quite tell, with you having the Golden Gate Bridge behind you, does this mean you're in the States, or it's just a nice backdrop?
Yeah, there are the couple of them who are sort of intermediaries, but they're asking for quite a huge transaction fee. Yep. So it's like 2% of the amount. So if you're transferring 50 million USDT, that comes up to a big chunk of commission to pay out. Yep. To convert it to US dollars. And another thing is these networks, some of them, they say they are regulated, and some, I don't know if they're regulated. Can you trust these networks with such a huge volume of transactions? Mm-hmm. Apparently they say it's no problem, right? But you just have to trust that they're able to do it without any kind of problems.
Yeah, we're going to unfortunately have to pick up on this on another time. Unfortunately, we're out of time today on this. As is so often the case, we just get onto a really interesting topic and I go, right, sorry guys, we have to go now. So just have to apologise for that. But it'd be interesting to follow up on that conversation further, maybe in next week, if people want to come back and we can continue chatting about that.
So where do we find these conversations?
Well, these conversations, this is held every Sunday evening, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. UK time. And you can use the link that you used today, Lorraine, to get back onto it.
Yeah, but it said recorded. So where does that go?
That goes onto YouTube. And I think you're on some of the WhatsApp groups that I'm in. That if you saw me posting about this meeting, I will repost later on when I edit the session and share a link to the YouTube video.
All right.
No problem. Let's go.
Nice to meet you, Stuart.
Lorraine, thanks for joining. Stuart, thanks for joining. John, sorry that you only came in late on and we're having to drop off, but thanks for joining. Hopefully you can come back and have a chat with us further next week.
Next week, yeah. I'll find out if there's any recommendations as to what is the most efficient way of, depositing it into cost-wise and in terms of safety-wise as well.
Cool. Let's follow up on that next week then. And meanwhile, have a great day, everybody.